Okay. Today is week 4, and I will teach you about the C program control. That as you see that if you have just only if course is not enough, because if you want to write a program or if you want to control something, you need to do it it in iteration or repetition, right? So what you have to learn today, that will be the most, I think it is the most important part in computer programming, because when you use computer, you need to do something that has to be in the iteration or repeat it again and again, right? So you need to know some constructs that will be important and will be useful for control the program repeatedly. So this is what we have to study today. That is about the repetition construct, right? And we have to start from the most the simplest one, right? That is for loop, and then we'll go to while loop and do while loop, right? And we will go to the switch statement, that is a kind of multiple selection, and we have to know how to use break and continue control statements in order to alter the flow of the control or to change the flow of control. And then okay, for today I will stop here and will not talk about the logical operator and the equality assignment. We'll talk about this later in the lab. Okay, so I will have to start from the introduction of this chapter. As I just told you that the most important things in computer programming, that is you have to control the repetition structure of the program. So in this part, I will focus on just only what we call loop. Loop, right? So in C program, we have for loop, and we also have while loop. And for while loop, we also have do while as well, right? These three structures or control structure, we will use them in different way. That is what I'm going to talk to you today, right? And before we end up this chapter, I will teach you about the switch statement. And in switch statement, we will have two kinds of important statement, that is a break and continue. Okay, this is all of the things that I will talk to you today. Before I will go to the selections, before I will go to the loop statement, I will have to remind you about what we have done or studied last time. That is about the sequence. If you want to draw a flow chart for a sequence, you may have to use start, right? And that is an oval, right? And if you want to end of your program, you can just use end and this notation. And then if you want to perform the process, right, like do step A, step B, step C, you can use the rectangle. Okay, that you have studied this already. And for the selection, you in C program, you can use if statement. You may start from start and end up with this notation. And then for if statement, you can use diamond to be the notation for the decision making, right? And in this, inside this diamond, you have to use what we call logical expression, right? In order to check for the logical value, right? Whether it is yes or no, or true or false, right? If the result of this expression is yes, so we will go to this side. or left hand side. Normally we will use the left hand side and then do the process and end up with here. Maybe you can use connector circle here as a connector. And if we go to the right hand side, this no, right? You can go to this process and then go to the same junction here, right? Sometimes we can call this connector. Okay, so this is what we have done last time. And then, okay, the next one is the repetition essential. That is the loop. When we talk about the loop, right, we have studied that we have two kinds of the repetition. That is counter control and the sentinel control repetitions. Right, we have two kinds. Right, loop is a structure that we use to execute repeatedly while some condition remains true. It means that in the diamond, if inside the diamond, when we check for the condition and if it's true, so we can continue with the loop. Okay, so this we call the loop conditions. And it needs to be true all the time. Otherwise, it will go out of the loop and then stop. Go out of the loop and then stop. Okay. For the counter control repetition, right? The definite repetition, so you can know how many loops will be executed, and the control variable used to count repetition. This is the counter control repetition. Normally we will use this for loop because we know exactly the number of the loops to be executed. And the other one is a sentinel controlled repetition. You may not know about the number of the loops, right? So you need just only the sentinel value in order to indicate the end of data. For example, you need to read some values, and then you read until the value is -1 to indicate the end of data, -1. So that's all, right? That's we call this as a sentinel control repetition. Normally we will use while loop, but it's not exactly. But if you know the counter or the number of the loops, you can use for. But if you need to have the sentinel control, you can use while. But once again, it's not exactly. I will tell you later why it's not exactly. Okay, we'll start from the counter control repetition, right? You can use for loop, right? So in order to finish this counter control repetition, first of all, you need to define a variable that is a control variable or loop counter. Sometimes you will define as an integer counter. Right? Counter is a good example of to name this control variable, right? And you need to initialize the value of this control variable. For example, if you want to count from 1 to 10, right, you may need to assign counter starting from 1, right? And the next one is the necessary one. This is an incrementer or increment, right? You need to control this variable by modify it. Sometimes you need to increase it by 1. For example, if you want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you need to use count is equal to count plus 1. Or sometimes you can use count plus in order to be used instead of count is equal to count plus 1, right? And then you need to know the final value of the control variable, right? You want to stop this loop by using the final value. These 3 things are the most important parts in counter control repetition, especially in the for loop. For this example, this is a good example of, this is a flow chart for counter control repetition. Okay, X is a variable name. and this statement is the initialization. And this one is what? Ending condition. This loop will be executed while this ending condition remains true. And the last one, this is the increment x plus plus, right? This is the counter control loop to increase the number of the counter or x variable by 1, right? So this is pretty easy. What is this program doing? Start from 0, 0 is still less than 10, and then do something, and then increment x to 1. So you have to check 1. So you start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Now you can still do the task, like, but when you increment to 10, when you check this 10 less than 10, this is not correct. So you will go to no and then end your program. So how many loops or how many times do you execute do task? Anyone can answer me? How many loops or how many times that you do task? 10 times, 9 times. How many? There are two answers. The answer is 10 because you have to start from 0, right? 0 is 1, 1 is 2, and then 9 will be 10. So it will execute 10 times. Please remember that we initialize this x to 0 first. So x is 0. So anyway, we have to do the first, do task the first time. And then we increment it, and then we will, x will be 1, and then we do the second task, second time. Okay, so in this example, you will do 10 times or 10 loops. Be careful about the counter. If you start from 0, you may have to be careful. How about this example? How many times will you execute this loop? Okay, before we will go to that, the answer of the number of the loops, right? Maybe we have to check for the structure of this program. Okay, this program will start from okay, comments, right? And then compiler directive, right? And the main program. And then this the line 8, right? This is quite new to you, right? Normally we have to use just only integer, counter, and then semicolon. Right? Normally we will write like this: integer, counter, and then semicolon. But this one is very special. We can call it as a compound statement. Compound statement. Compounds mean compound statement. We will have more than one statement in this one statement. So we can say it compound. Okay, so this statement will be the definition, and assignment will be performed simultaneously. What does that mean? It means that integer counter is a definition, and it will be assigned to be 1. It will be initialized to 1, right? So this one is called assignment statement. So that's why we call it compound statement. And we also have unsigned. Unsigned integer means as its name, right? Unsigned means it cannot be negative. So we can call it non-negative. You can use non-negative integer. Non-negative integer, right? In order to make sure that your counter will not go to negative one, right? Like -1, -2, right? And it is quite obvious that your counter will be positive all the time because it will be initialized to 1, and then you use while loop, right? While counter is less than or equal to 10, right? Less than or equal to 10. So it means that the counter will start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 10. So how many loops will you have to do in this program? Okay, correct. Thank you for your answer, Suhani and San, for 10, right? That's correct. That is 10, right? In this way, you can see that they will print out. We print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. When we go to 10, right, we write 10 and then plus counter. Okay, this one is quite special. You use plus before the counter. What does this mean? It means that when you put plus, it will increment first. I will tell you later about counter plus or plus counter. There are some tiny difference, but it's quite important. You can use a plus counter in the printf, or you can use counter plus in printf as well, right? So I press this outside here in order to make sure, or in order to show that it's an increment part of the counter, right? Okay, and a special specifier, right? Percent sign u. Percent sign u means unsigned integer, right? You can use this as an unsigned integer. And in the Kahoot, right, you can, you have percent sign C, right? If you want to get the character input, or if you want to print a character. This one is to print out a character or to get a character. Or you can use S, percent sign S for a string, right? And percent sign F for floating point and double. Okay, this is the result of this function or this program. Okay, actually we have used in the previous slide, we used the while loop, right? But I want to show here, we can use for repetition loop, right? This would be easier if you know exactly the number of the loops, or the number of the counter, the counter, or the number of times that you have to use in your program. From this example, you have known that you will use only 10 loops, right? So I suggest you to use for loop, because for keyword, right, you just have 3 simple part, right, that you have to define in the for statement, right? The first is the initialization part. Initialization. Okay, in this part you will have to initialize the variable. For this example, you need to initialize counter, which is a sentinel repetition or the sentinel control repetition, right? You set it to 1, right? And don't forget to use semicolon here and this semicolon here in order to separate the 4 condition into 3 parts. The second one is a loop continuation, or sometimes I will call it ending condition. You can use this part as an ending condition in order to stop the loop, right? Suppose you want to count until counter is equal to 10. So you can just simply put counter is equal to 10. But in this loop, you need to put less than or equal, because you want to check whether the counter is still less than or equal to 10. Even you want to reach 10, right? So you sometimes you set counter is equal to 10, but for loop, right, you need to check for the condition, or it is the logical expression. So you need to put the logical expression here, right, to control the loop continuation condition. And the last one, which is pretty easy, so you can just put the counter or the increment in the increment of the counter control variables, like control counter plus or plus counter. It doesn't matter. You can use counter plus or plus counter. It doesn't matter in this format. So I just want you to remember this format, right? This one is is pretty easy, right? For the beginner like you, right? You can start with this 4 in order to control the loop. That would be easy for you to have the jump start for the loop statement. Okay? This one you have to remember. Okay, so in order to make sure that you just simply convert that while statement into for loop, right? It's very easy, right? So you start from using unsigned integer counter, right? You can see that you don't have to initialize it. You can initialize this, right? And then you need the ending condition, right? And then the last one is the incrementer. If you could remember, I have start with the 4 conditions for the loops, right? The first one is name your variable. Second is initialization. The third one is condition, and the last one is incrementer. So you can see that we have 3, or you have 4. You have 4 things that it needs to concern, or you have to remember that you have to put into the for loop, right? Anytime, any for loop. You can see that 3 important parts, right? 1, 2, 3 important parts are divided here in for loop. That's why I asked you to start with 4, right? So you will not forget to put anything in that is important in the loop, right? Counter will be initialized. Counter we have to check for the ending condition. Counter you have to increment it, or sometimes you have to decrease it. It doesn't matter. If you want to write the program not to write from 10, 9, 8 to 1, right? You have to use decrementer, right? You can use counter. Okay, this is counter plus plus, so you can use counter minus minus in order to decrease the counter. Okay, do you get the point? Please remember, for loop you have 3 sessions: initialization, ending condition, and then incrementer or decrementer, right? And you also have to define, right? Sometimes in some compiler, instead of using the declaration here and the statement here in different statement, sometimes you can put integer here in C++ compiler. Or even in the block code block, right? You can use integer counter here. But for the unsigned C standard, you cannot do like this. You have to to define it separately. But I think this is a good idea to define integer here, because you can guarantee that for loop, like 1, 2, 3, 4 things that the important things that important in the while loop, in the for loop, right, will be put together in the same statement. But it's okay, if you can remember, so that's okay. Okay, because I am quite see the importance of flowchart, right? When I teach you C programming, I will have to show you the flowchart of the C programming, right? From the previous slide, you can see that this is a for loop, right? But you have to know how to convert from for loop into the flowchart as well. For this example, right, you have to start from the initialization control is equal to 1. But please remember, in flowchart, you don't have to declare the type of the variable, right? But you have to keep in mind that in C programming, you need to declare or define the type of the variable. And then the second part is the ending condition, right? And this one is the counter. So in flowchart as well, you need to remember 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1. This is the declaration. You don't need to put it in the flowchart, but initialization you need it. Ending condition you need it. Counter you need it. Okay. This is very simple. I hope that all of you can understand and remember how to write the flowchart for 4 like this. Okay, this is a summary for loop and while loop, right? You can use for loop and you can use while loop as well. So maybe when I was young and when I was in the university, I always try to map from for loop and while loop, right? So I try to write it into the expression 1, expression 2, expression 3. As I told you that we have for loop, and we have expression 1, expression 2, and expression 3, right? But if I don't, sometimes I don't like to, I want to change from for loop to while loop, right? So I can just simply put expression 1 to here, and then expression 2 to here, and then expression 3 inside the while loop. So I would say that the first and second here are exactly the same in C programming, perform the same thing. So I would say that I don't mind that you will write for loop. I don't mind if you write while loop, but it depends. But I have the remark here. If you know exactly the number of the loops, you can use for loop. But if you don't know the number of the loops, you just know the ending of the loop, you can use while loop. But it's not exactly. In the real world, I as a programmer or developer, I always use for loop, right? For the sake of simplicity and I'm lazy, right? Why I'm lazy and I say that for loop, I will use for loop because I can guarantee that I will have to write the 3 important conditions or 3 important expression in for loop. It can guarantee that I will not forget that. Okay, if I write while loop, I have to, okay, expression 1 outside the while loop and expression 3 will be inside while loop. Maybe sometimes we will forget to put the whole things, right? When you are trying to write the long or the sophisticated program, right? You may forget that. So in order to guarantee that you will not forget that, and it's the good standard of code, right? You need to like inform. I suggest that. Okay, this is the note and observation for statement. Okay, the first one, the initialization loop, continuation condition, and increment can contain arithmetic expression. For this example, if x is equal to 2 and y is set to 10 before the for statement, so you can also use j is equal to x, okay? J is initialized by x, but x is 2, so 2 will be assigned to x, right? So that's why this called variable can be used in the initialization part as well. And the condition, you can simply use j is less than 4 multiplied by x multiplied by y, so that's okay. Or incrementation here, j is equal to, okay, this one is j is equal to j plus y divided by x. If you forget that, right? Plus equal sign is equal to j is equal to j plus the rest. Okay. And also this statement will equivalent to j is equal to 2. J is initialized into 2 by 2 and then j less than or equal to 80. Something like that. Second, the increment may be negative. Okay, I've already said that. So that we will call it decrement or the loop counts downward. Can use count minus right, in order to perform the count downward. The third one, if the loop continuation condition is initially false, the loop body will not be executed. Does not execute. If it initially false, so you don't have to go to that anything in the body part. Then the control variable is frequently printed or used in calculation in the body of the loop, but it need not to be. It's common to use the control variable for controlling the partition while never mentioning it in the body of the loop. Okay. The control variable like counter, right? It is frequently printed or used in the calculation, but it's not necessary. You can print the number or the counter, or you don't have to print it out. It doesn't matter. You need to just only control the number of the loop, right? You don't have to print out. But if you want to print out, it's okay. And the last one, the fourth statement is flowcharted, much like the while statement. Okay, this is, you have already seen it, right? Flowchart and while statement, when you draw it in the for statement and the while loop, right? When you draw it as a flowchart, they are exactly the same, right? So that's why I say that it doesn't matter that you will use the while loop or for loop. Okay. For this statement, you can. Okay, this is a good example. Suppose I want to sum even integer from 2 to 100. What can I do? Normally, it's very easy, right? When you want to sum integer from 1 to 10, right? You can use for loop, right? Number from 1, number less than or equal to 10. And this one is very easy, right? So you want to sum only even number,เลขคู่ from 2 to 100. So you need to initialize sum to 0, set it to 0, right? Like new one. And then you need number, right? You have to step up number from 2, 4, 6, right? So in for loop, right, you may have to start from the first one, that is 2, right? And you have already known that you have to count to 100. So you use number less than or equal to 100 as the question, as the problem, right? And then you need only even number. So even number means 2 to 4 to 6 to 8, right? So the step is plus 2. So what should we do is you can just use number plus equal to 2. So this means number is equal to number plus 2. Okay, please remark here, plus sign equal is equal to number plus 2. Okay, I will not remind this again. Okay, This is what you all 80 students here you need to know. This one, this is a shorter form of this one. Okay, and then inside the loop, right, you need to have sum is equal to sum plus number, right? Add the number to sum. Okay, and then you can print out sum is equal to unsigned integer, the sum, right? And the sum is 2,550. So in the future, if you want to sum even integer, so you can simply like C program in order to count it. In order to show the result, you don't need to count it by yourself. Okay, up to now, do you have any questions? I think what I'm teaching today is step by step, right? If you stuck in some place, please raise your hand and ask me. I will repeat it again. But I think this program is quite obvious. Just step up from just count summation from 1 to 10 to 100, and then only even numbers will be sum. Okay, if you don't have any question, I will go to the next one. Okay, this is the good program. It's good example. Okay, if we want to find the compound interest, to calculate for the compound interest, okay, the problem is a person invests $10,000 in a saving account, yielding 5% interest per year. Right? Assuming that all interest is left on deposit on the account. Calculate and print amount of money in the account at the end of each year for 10 years. Use the following formula determining these amounts. A is equal to P multiplied by 1 plus R raised to the power n. N is the number of year. R is the annual interest rate. And P is the original amount invested. That is 1,000. So what will be the answer? This one, right? Okay. In order to write program, you may have to use math function because you are going to use power rate. Actually, you don't have to use any formula. In the previous slide, you have the formula, right? To calculate for the annual interest, and then you have to add it up to your investment, right? And then use your saving account and the number of new money in your account, and then to calculate for the next year compound interest rate. In Thai ดอกเบี้ยทบต้นนะคะ Okay, so what you have to do is you have to set the number of variables, right? And now you use double in order to represent the real number. For example, amount, principal, this is the initialized to 1,000. And then you put dot zero in order to indicate that this one is the floating point, right? And the rate is 0.05, and year is the number of the year. You can see that we have 10 years. So for loop, right? Year from 1 to 1 less than 10, and then plus year. And then you put the body. So in order to, it's very easy. It's the structure is all the same, right? This one is initialization. This one is declaration. Sorry. This one declaration, variable declaration part, and this one is you just print out the number of the year. Okay, anything you want to put as a output, and then this is a for loop, right? This one is a formula, and from the previous slide, right? A is equal to P, A is equal to P1 plus R raised to the power N, right? P is principal multiplied by the power 1 plus R, right? Rate, and then raised to the power year, right? And this is the amount. You want to print the amount of each year, and then when you use the formula, you can come up with this output, right, which is the amount of the deposit. This is a result of your banking account, the deposit in your banking account for each year until the year 10. This one is very easy because you use the what we call the formula, but actually you can calculate it by yourself. You don't have to need the formula, but once again you use the function pound, right? Pound means if you want 2 raised to the power 3, you can use pound function pound 2 3, right? That means 2 raised to the power 3. So if you want to use pound function, you have to include that compiler directive math.h here. Math.h. Okay. Okay. You have seen that we have now stepped up to the use the floating point and the double types in C programming in order to represent the real number, right? But you need to be careful, especially in the banking system, right? For banking system, you need just only 2 digits. But for the floating point and double, right, you can see that we have more than 2 digits, right? And sometimes it needs to be a round up. What does it mean by round up? Suppose you have the value in here, right? 32.907, right? If you use just only 2 digits, right, it will be round up to like this, right? Can you see the problem? If you have the 14.14 like this, right, and it will be displayed like this. When you use percent sign dot 2f, it will be print out just only 2 digits like this. And you want to pass it with the number in 14.18.673 here, right? It will be print as 0.67. But when you sum it up, you will get the result here. And when you round up, you will get 32.91. But if you can see that this is 3 plus 7, it's supposed to be 0, right? But it's print out 91, right? It should be here. So you have been warned for using floating point and double in the decimal number. Decimal number, you need to be warned, right? As in the banking system. So in the banking system, I would say that they will not use float and double. Normally, they will use different kind of the type of the real number. That is the decimal type. Okay. This is I want to remind you to remark here, right? If you want to know more about this, I will understand later. Okay.